Hi, I'm here today with Sadie to go over the prong collar so you know how to use it for her training. So first up, we're going to go over all the parts of the prong collar. To begin, we have our center plate. This is what goes over the trachea. Next up, we have our prong links. So our prong links open and close by pushing up, squeezing, releasing. And then to put it back together, we'll squeeze the two links together, and that way they all go back together. Next, we have our O-ring and our D-ring. Our D-ring is where we're going to be clipping the leash, and our O-ring is what provides that cinch to the collar. So, important to know is we can add and remove links as time goes on, and we want to practice this whenever possible. So, practice makes perfect with this. It's going to take some work, and you're going to find what works best for you. Next up, we have how we are going to fit it onto her. So, we'll have a close-up view on how to fit it to her later, but basically we want it fit snug and high up on the neck. We don't want it twisting on her neck. We don't want to be able to put a whole hand under it. We want to barely put a finger underneath this actual prong link, and that's how we know it's fit right to her. Next up, we have our safety. Safety is really important when it comes to Sadie and our dogs. We want to make sure that we are not leaving it on overnight or unattended. We want to put it on when we are training because it is a training tool. So we want to make sure it is only used when necessary. We don't want to keep it on whenever she is not around us. So that way we know she is being safe and secure. So whenever we have it on her, we're going to provide a correction. Corrections vary depending on what we're doing, and it's going to be a pop and release motion. So whenever we are giving that pop and release, it's going to provide the same sensation as another dog giving a correction. So this provides a very clear communication to her. The big thing with this is we want it to make sure it's working. It's either going to be working or it's not. Giving this pop and release is going to depend on how hard we have to do it. So whenever we are doing it, we want to make sure we give that pop towards wherever we want her to go. So if we are telling her to sit and she does not sit, we want to give a pop towards the butt. So that way she understands we want her to sit. Same with down. If we tell her down and we do not get that behavior, we're going to give her a pop towards the ground. Depending on what we need, it's going to be dependent on where that correction goes. Next up, we have the timing. We want to make sure that we are doing it very quickly. We can't do it a lot later because then she's not going to understand what that correction is for. We want to do it as soon as it is needed. So within a second and a half at most is when we want to give that correction so she understands what it is for. We always want to make sure that we give them one shot. We give them that command, and if they do not do it, they need that correction. Next, we're going to be going over how to fit the collar onto Sadie. First, we want to make sure it is high and snug, as I mentioned before. So, we're going to fit it on her. Why, Sadie? How to move her hair out the way.
She's not going to do it.
Okay. Next, we're going to be going over Sadie's obedience. So we're going to start with the basics: sit, down, heel, place, come, and stay. So a big thing to keep in mind is she has an implied stay with sit, down, and place. This implied stay means that every time I give her that command, she is expected to stay in that command until given a release. Her release command is a pat on the head and okay. Those two at the same time lets her know that is a full release. That way I can still pet her on the head when she's in a down and she doesn't think she can get up. Or I can have a conversation and say the words okay and she doesn't think I'm releasing her. This gives her a very clear communication of when we expect her to get up and stay down. So we're going to start with her sit command. Whenever I give it to her, once again, we expect her to sit and stay in that sit until given a release. Sadie, sit. Good girl. So I am able to back away from her, and she knows to stay in that command until I give her that release. So I'm going to give her rewards, tell her good girl, so she knows that I like the behaviors that she is doing. Okay. I give her that release, and once again she can pop up, get up, do what she wants to do. Next up, we're going to go over her down command. So her down, once again, has that implied stay with the release command. Are you itchy? Sadie. Down. Once again, I can back away. I can lose eye contact, and she knows to stay in that down until I give her that release command. So I'm going to give her a reward. I can walk around, anything, and she once again stays. Good girl. Okay, good job. As you saw in the beginning, she was on her place bed over here. Once again, we're going to do place one more time just so you can see it with that full command. This also has that implied stay. Sadie, place. Good girl. The place bed is a command that is any texture that is different than the floor around her. So right now she is on a cot, but she can use a blanket, a towel, a pet bed, anything that you have around that you want to use as a place, and it is very mobile. So you can use it at the beach or somewhere new. Wherever you want to go, you can have her do a place command. The place command is really beneficial because you can have the dog sit on it, lay down, they can twirl around in circles. As long as they have all four paws on the bed, they are doing the command correctly. So she has herself in a down right now, but she can get up and go to the other side of the bed, whatever makes her comfortable. It's a nice place for her to just hang out with the family without actually having to be free. She can just lay here and hang out. Okay, good girl. So next up we have her heel command. Her heel command is where we want her on the left side, heeling right beside us. We'll be using this anytime we're out on a walk. It is really good for her because it's very structured and fun. So in the heel command, like I said, we want her on our left side, level with our knee. So I don't want her pulling too far ahead or going behind. We want to make sure she is right there beside us. Whenever I give her this command, she has an implied sit at the end. So every time I stop, I want her to stop with me and sit beside me. So you'll see that at the end, and every time I start walking again, I'm going to tell her heel once again. So we'll go ahead and walk this way. I'm going to move the place bed out of the way so we have that room. So once again, I'm going to tell her heel and start walking at the same time. Sadie, heel. Good girl. Excitement. Good girl. Oh, you missed it. Heel. Good girl. Good job. So every time we start walking, I tell her heel again. Right now she has a little bit of excitement. So once again, we're just going to tell her heel. Good girl. Good job. She's a good girl. We're going to walk her back to the middle, and that is her heel command. Next up, we have her recall. So her recall, I'm going to bring in Emily to do recall with me. So I'm going to back up. Emily is going to tell her, Sadie, come. And Sadie is going to come to her and sit in front of her. Okay.
Sadie, come.
Okay.
Sadie. Sadie. Sadie, come.
The drop treat.
Sadie, come. Yeah, good girl.
Sadie, come. Good girl. Good girl. So as you saw there, she got distracted. I dropped a treat earlier. So Emily just kept going and doing some puppy noises to get her attention back. As soon as she came to her, she told her good girl, praised her up, and it brought Sadie back into the mindset of recalling. Sometimes if small distractions like that just get her, you just have to be exciting and bring her back to where she was. Next up, we have Sadie's door manners. So this is for whenever we are entering or exiting the home or any exterior door. She knows to put herself into a sit until given a release to come through the door too. This is so we can confidently walk through the door without her rushing through or leaving the house without permission. This prevents her rushing through the door with excitement, and then it also helps her understand that we are allowed to exit before she is going to go with us. So we expect her to stay in that sit until we give her her release command. So I'll be showing you that now. So I can walk through and she knows to wait for me to give that release command. Okay, good girl. This rule is applicable when going into the home or when we are exiting. So once again, Sadie, sit. So if she breaks it, I just give her a small correction. Right there, I gave her a quick verbal correction to let her know incorrect. And once again, I can walk through and she knows to stay in that position until given, okay, her release command. So now she knows she can walk back through with me, and that way we are not rushing out of the home.
The touch command is used as a form of tactile stimulation to help with things such as anxiety, stimming behaviors, meltdowns, frustration, overstimulation, and panic attacks. When given the touch command, the dog is trained to push its nose against a person repetitively in order to get their attention and help them refocus on their dog. The beginning of training this task starts with teaching the dog to touch a target. When the dog first showed interest in the target, we used the clicker to mark the behavior of it touching its nose to the target. We eventually shape this behavior into the dog now understanding that it touches the target on a general person repetitively until it gets a reward. Now that the dog has been delivered, it's time to begin teaching the dog that the only person it uses the touch command on is its new owner. We are now shifting the dog's use of the touch command from general people to a specific person. In the beginning, while the bond is being formed between the dog and its new owner, you will simply practice the touch command a few times a day to first teach the dog who it will always be using the touch command on. Eventually, when you're comfortable using the clicker and working with the dog, you will begin practicing sessions of the touch command during self-stimming behaviors, meltdowns, panic attacks, and so on. This will be the beginning of the next phase of training for the dog. Now that it knows who it needs to touch, next it will begin learning when to touch. Let's review the stages of training to reach this goal. First, the dog has been taught what to do. Touch a person repetitively. This is done during its time with the trainers. Next, the dog learns who to touch. This happens by practicing many sessions of the dog only touching its specific person. Lastly, the dog learns when to touch its owner. This is done by practicing touch when the person is feeling overwhelmed, anxious, having a meltdown, or during self-stimming behaviors. Before you begin a session, you will need treats, a target, and a clicker. Place the target on the dog's new owner, whether that's yourself or a loved one, and be prepared to use your clicker. Good coordination and timing takes practice, so don't get frustrated if you feel overwhelmed at first. Say touch to instruct the dog what to do. Use the clicker to mark the exact moment the dog pushes its nose to the target or person. Vary how many times the dog must touch before getting its reward. However, you will still click every time it touches. The lay command is a form of deep pressure therapy to help with things such as meltdowns, anxiety, and overstimulation. When given the lay command, the dog is trained to lay over a person's body or lap to administer deep pressure and then remain there until either released or until the person gets up and it is no longer possible for the dog to continue laying.
Okay.
We began teaching this task by luring the dog over someone and rewarding them for lying down on the person. We added the release, pat on the head with the word okay, until the dog understood it could not get up until it received that release. As the dog progressed through training, we eventually added movement from the person so the dog understood it needs to stay, regardless of how much the person is moving around.
Good job.
Now that the dog has been delivered, it's time to begin teaching the dog that the only person it uses the lay command on is its new owner. We are now shifting the dog's use of the lay command from people in general to a specific person. The feeling and idea of a dog lying on its new owner may need some getting used to. This is why it's important to practice the lay command several times a week. The effect of deep pressure given by the dog will depend on its new owner's acceptance of the idea, and sometimes this can take time. Eventually, you will begin using the lay command for meltdowns, anxiety, or any other reason its new owner would need deep pressure therapy for. Make sure you have some treats to reward the dog before you begin a session. The person the dog will be laying on also needs to be in a position that makes it possible for the dog to complete the task. Clearly give the command lay. This will cue the dog to lay over the person. Vary the length of time that the dog must stay in the position. If your dog tries to get up, pop the collar downward to correct them for this, just as you would for the downstay. When finished, remember to release the dog with the pat on the head and the word okay. Tethering is a task trained to promote safety and build better habits for children who struggle with eloping behaviors. The dog is trained to heel beside the parent or handler while the child is tethered to the dog's service vest. In order to maintain the heel position, the dog must pull against the pressure of the child when they try to bolt or wander away. The dog can also be put into a downstay while tethered to the child and act as a sort of anchor to keep the child safe during high traffic areas.